even the brokers didn't understand what's underneath the hood of, fully insured, of ASO, right? And I realized like, okay, now that the biggest part of my job is creating awareness. So it's not so much selling Pareto, it's just awareness of what's actually happening and why these increases are coming, why the plans are completely out of control.
Welcome to Self-Funded with Spencer, sponsored by ParetoHealth, ClaimDoc, and PlanSight. Whether we're discussing innovative new healthcare strategies, exposing hidden revenue streams or misaligned incentives, or even just cheering on the next generation of this industry, we promise you that you're going to learn something. So thank you for joining us for another great conversation about the future of healthcare.
The cool part about baseball is, well, two things that when I look back, what I loved about it was, as a pitcher, as soon as the ball left my fingers, I was completely out of control.
Okay.
I have no control at that moment until whatever happens is going to happen. But I was able to control every single moment up towards that, right? So every pole I ran, every workout I did, every time I spent extra time stretching, every time I looked at a scouting report, all those incremental minutes led to better outcomes when the ball left my hand. But there's still something about it that's uniquely beautiful is this: you can control what you control until you can't. The ball left my hand and I had no control. And I think I've been able to kind of adapt that towards, business and life, and you can control what you can control. You can't control what you can't control. And if you put your best foot forward, you're in a better.
Well, I think the preparation, and I assume we started, so we'll probably include some of that conversation, but we'll get into your baseball background. I'm here with Shawn Sanford, by the way. Shawn, hey, how are you?
Hey.
Intro. Thanks for coming to sit down with me. You're with us with Pareto. You're RVP and pod leader in Northern California. Thanks for joining me. You're here on this trip. Kristen's down as well. We just had a conversation with her, and I'm sure we'll release them in that order. But I want to continue the conversation just for the folks that caught the first part. I love the preparation component of that. And I think when we start to get into your sales job and your role and the success you've had, what it speaks to is, you know what you can control and what you can't control. You can control so much of the preparation component of that. So that's the studying, that's the activity, generating pipeline, et cetera. And you can control up to the point of trying to get the deal closed. And ultimately there still is elements of a sales job, no matter how good you are or how great the product is that you represent. There are many, many different reasons that are outside of your control that a buyer ultimately will say no. So is there corollary that you draw between baseball and the sales role in that regard as well, that control aspect?
Yeah, I think it's part of who I am and why I've gotten to where I am or where I haven't gotten. I'm Shawn. I'm a vice president of sales at Pareto. I manage Northern California, and I used to play professional baseball. Before that, I played college baseball. Before that, I played high school baseball, and I've all my findings and all the things that I've done in my life have led to the person that I am. And I think that baseball, what it taught me was preparation is key, because there's so much in that game that you cannot control.
Yeah.
Right? From a hitter's perspective, you hit 3 out of 10, you're a Hall of Famer, is a common saying. Baseball's really hard. From a pitcher's perspective, as soon as the ball leaves my fingers, I have no control over what happens, but I had the ability to control everything leading up to that point. And I think that with what we do, there's tough stop-loss manuals. There's this TPA that we're relying on for this opportunity or that opportunity, the pharmacy benefit manager, the consultant, the employer, the multiple decision makers at the employer. There's so many things that I can't control. All I can do is make sure that I'm a savant in my territory. I reach out to folks like you, to Kristen, internal to Pareto, external to Pareto, and make sure that I am putting my best foot forward, that I can be as compelling and as focused on the task at hand. And then at the end of the line, the cards are going to...
You just sort of leave it up to fate. I mean, you can try your best to control outcomes, but there was a moment in my life, and it happened probably in my 30s or so, where I realized the more I gave up the control of the outcome itself when I didn't have control over it, the happier I found myself, but also I realized I'd actually have more success because you operate in a different way when you realize you don't actually control the outcome. You behave in a different way. And we've all heard in the sales world, desperation breath or commission breath, right? When you know a salesperson is desperate for a sale, they behave in a different way that actually turns you off and actually ends up being an inhibitor to their success as well. And so relinquishing that knowledge of relinquishing of the ultimate outcome wasn't really up to me in most situations. I think that actually gets yourself out of your own way in a lot of aspects too. Why don't we do this, Shawn? I know you gave us like the 10-second version of you as a baseball player and you grew up, but where did you actually grow up?
Grew up in South Jersey, Washington Township until I was 9. Then we moved to Cinnaminson. Say that.
What?
Say that 10 times fast. Cinnaminson, New Jersey, right over the bridge from Philadelphia.
Okay.
So grew up a huge Eagles fan. South Jersey, Philly, kind of.
Do you maintain the Eagles fan?
I absolutely do.
Okay.
So yeah, I think my daughter, one of her first words was "Go Birds," or her first phrases. So she could do the EAGL.
Really?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Grew up in South Jersey. That's where majority of my childhood was spent in Cinnaminson, and then was fortunate enough to head down to Tampa and went to college at University of South Florida. Loved Tampa, became kind of my home, my city.
Did you go there because of baseball, I presume, right?
So it was, there was a lot to it. So I was recruited for football and baseball. Was looking at multiple options, right? I didn't know which direction I wanted to go. Baseball kind of was like a later flourish. I was more of a football player until really my senior year.
Were you quarterback?
I was quarterback.
Okay. Yep.
Not that I was recruited as a quarterback, I was recruited as a free safety.
Okay.
Football was the focus, and then all of a sudden, one summer before, between junior and senior year, I started throwing 90 miles per hour, and all of a sudden, baseball was now the focus. And when I was kind of a late bloomer, so there wasn't a ton of opportunity from a
Sure.
Division I scholarship standpoint, but once, it's kind of like the bell goes off, right? He's hitting 90, and now all of a sudden, all the colleges are there, and I had kind of my pick of the litter, and I had not committed yet, so I had kind of a lot of opportunity to evaluate, like, where do I want to go, what school, what city, where do I want to take this next step in my journey. And unfortunately, my dad was sick at the time. He had been battling cancer for a majority of my life, and it was kind of towards the end.
Okay.
And it kind of helped make the decision for us. He wanted to be down by the water, and he wanted to enjoy what he thought was the last few years. So my mother actually took me to Barnes & Noble's in Morristown, which is the town next to Cinnaminson, and we got a book, The Colleges of the U.S., and we looked for schools in Tampa, and we saw USF, University of South Florida, Division I. My mother called the number on the book and got to some person, and then through 5, 6, 7 different connections, finally got Eddie Cardieri, who was the head baseball coach at the time, on the phone, and he's thinking, and he's actually fast forward, at my father's funeral, he actually shared the story. I get these calls all the time. My son's the greatest thing since sliced bread. You're going to love my son, blah, blah, blah. Ultimately, he was like, oh, yeah, it's typical mom. Yeah, we're having a camp. Come on down to the camp. My mother and I got on a plane. We went down to the camp. I'd never heard of USF, never heard of South Florida before. Division I, great. I went to the camp. I think I threw 3 pitches. They pulled me off the field, took me upstairs, offered me a scholarship. My mom and I verbally committed right there. We went home and told my dad and celebrated.
Okay, so how I've known you for a year and a half, Shawn. How did I not know this story? Like, you literally threw 3 pitches?
At the camp, I threw 3 pitches, and they took me upstairs.
So what was the reason? It was like they just seen enough, and they're like, this kid's got something? Or like, why only 3 pitches?
I mean, I was just the guy whose mom was talking about how he's, the next Nolan Ryan and blah, blah, blah. And I think at the time, they're just like, well, let's get him out of the camp. We'll get to see him, but also we'll get his $275
for sure.
for the clinic. 3 pitches, and they said, whoa, okay. You can come play baseball here if you want.
Yeah.
And it was just pretty much that easy.
That's incredible. So did you finish out 4 years? Because sometimes folks that get drafted will leave early. So did you leave earlier? I don't even know if you were drafted. I'm sorry, I didn't ask that question.
So I was drafted by the Rangers out of high school, which was part of the, honestly, I probably maybe would have done that. Looking back, thank God I didn't, because my life would look a lot different now, knowing what I know. It was really, I wanted to spend time with my dad. My dad had wanted to go down to Florida. They had a home in Apollo Beach, which is kind of local to Tampa, and that's where he wanted to go. And it's essentially when I went to college, my whole family went to college. We all packed up. We all went down there together.
Incredible, man, for your family to do that.
Yeah, and my dad never missed a single game. So
that's
even
awesome.
Getting sick in the bathroom, whatever it was, he never missed a single college game. And fortunately, he was able to see me get drafted my junior year by the Giants and signed with the Giants. He was able to see me accomplish that. He didn't get to see me play professional baseball, which kind of stunk. but he got to see everything, every moment. We were talking earlier about the things you can control, and every moment leading to that opportunity, my dad was there.
That's awesome,
side by side. So.
Yeah, I didn't know that. I know the story, and thanks for sharing that on the podcast, man. That helps me kind of understanding where you come from, right, and the support you had. I mean, that's amazing, man. And I'm kudos to your father and your whole family for rallying around you and still supporting you even in that situation.
I got to go away.
Tough. Yeah.
I got to go away to school, but my mom and dad were 30 minutes down the road. I used to go 3 times a week for dinner, bring a bunch of my teammates and buddies over for dinner all the time.
ParetoHealth is the largest benefits captive in the United States. With nearly 3,000 captive members, 1.3 billion of stop-loss premium in force, and almost 1 million covered lives, no other benefits captive comes close to ParetoHealth's scale. But it's not just about the numbers. ParetoHealth is a mission-driven organization, and that mission has 2 distinct parts. Number 1, to make self-insurance simple and more accessible for small to mid-sized employers. And number 2, to arm them with the most powerful cost management tools on the market. So if you're an employer frustrated with your healthcare outcomes, or you're a benefits consultant looking for an alternative to the status quo, it's time to consider ParetoHealth. ParetoHealth, where employers come to do self-insurance right, to do it easily, and to do it at scale.
That's awesome, man. Well, so I don't want to make it too much about your baseball career, but I do want to at least put a bow on that part of your story before you get into your health insurance journey, or your insurance journey, because you didn't start off in health insurance. But like, talk to me about like that career, what that looked like, from the pros to minor leagues and stuff. Wrap it up for me real quick.
Yeah, so I signed with the Giants my junior year. So I had 29 credits remaining, so I did not have my college degree yet. My mother was smart enough to make sure that we got included in my signing bonus on my contract with the Giants was that they would help me pay for finishing school.
Cool.
Thank God she did that. And went about my minor league journey, played pretty much every level from rookie ball up to AAA. And then the writing was on the wall. I got released by the Giants in 2013. I probably played an extra 3 years when I really probably only should have played an extra year.
Okay.
But was a moment where every pitch I threw was with the intention to be a big leaguer. Like that was the goal, no matter what. And it took until I was 27 in indie ball. I was in Sussex, New Jersey, Montclair, New Jersey. And I threw the last game as the finals or the championship. I threw my last game. I walked in the mirror. I looked in the mirror and I said, "You're not going to make the big leagues." And I packed my stuff and I never thought about it again. I was gone. It wasn't about playing baseball and being in the locker room. It was about getting to that goal of being a big leaguer. And once I realized that it wasn't viable anymore,
How accept? I mean, you obviously came to the conclusion yourself. So you didn't have somebody else tell you you're not good enough. You came to the conclusion and decided to hang them up yourself. Like, how did you feel about that moment? Were you okay with that? Were you mature enough at 27 to accept that and decide I need to move on and re-identify myself, if you will?
Yeah, I mean, parts of it were hard. I think at the beginning I had a lot of angst for the things I didn't accomplish. Again, life goal, make the big leagues. Never accomplished it. Kind of, if you look at it, that's a failure from that perspective, right? There was a goal, I didn't accomplish it. I think that I had angst for that, and then the further I got from it, the more appreciation I had for the things that I did accomplish.
Yeah, for sure.
And then the angst for the ones that I didn't. I never got any pressure. Like my at the time girlfriend, now wife, Nadia, she was 100% supportive, and I would have continued to get a paycheck and a jersey if I wanted to. I could have played. I could still be playing now, I'm sure. But it was more, I'd already gotten my moment and my opportunity. I took it for all I could. There was a point in time where, there's a life to be lived and there's things that I want to accomplish, and a lot of that has to do with financials. And
did you have any idea what you would do after baseball then? Did you have an inkling?
So I was always told, you should be in sales, right? That's I always figured I'd end up in sales at some point. I didn't know what I was going to sell. It was actually somebody that Taylor Rogers.
Yeah.
He was my longest tenured teammate with the Giants in the minor leagues. So he hung him up in 2013, the end of 2013. I had played 14 and 15. From the moment he hung him up, he was calling me like every month saying, "Yeah, you're washed up, dude. Like this is a waste of time. You gotta get out of there." And I'm at this company called Unum, and it's a group healthcare company, it's a group insurance company. I think you'd be great at it. You should, give me a call when you're finally ready to to give up on the baseball thing. And I didn't know what insurance was, health insurance, ancillary insurance. I had no idea. I thought it was the guy that called me in, December, telling me to renew my policy for $21 or whatever it was. I didn't know that majority of Americans get access to their insurance through the employer or through Medicare. I didn't know it was a group setting. So I was very, very green. Didn't really understand what was going on. They had a wreck. Unum had a wreck in the San Francisco office, so he obviously put in a referral. I went and took my one and only interview with a suit that did not fit. I couldn't button the top button.
I was saying, what way? It was too small?
It was too small. I had a beard down to here. I had a man bun, and I'm sitting there with Terrence Ryan, the managing director at the time, in the San Francisco Unum office, and he'll tell the story. I didn't eat any of my breakfast. I was talking and talking and talking and talking. And he'll tell you now, but 2 minutes in, he's like, I'm going to hire this kid, but it's going to be uphill.
Yeah.
It's going to be a little bit of a battle because I didn't have my college degree. It's a requirement to have your college degree. So he helped me. By the way, I didn't show up with a resume because I didn't know I needed a resume. So he helped me build my resume, helped kind of coach me up to get through the interview process with Unum, and went to bat with corporate and ultimately was like, hey, he's going to do night school. He's going to do online school. We have an 8-month training program. Let's hire him in May, have him train, working essentially a 40-hour week, but he'll get the degree done. And once his degree's done, he'll be through training and we can give him a territory. And if I had to go back in time, I would probably not ever do that again.
That sounds intense, man.
It was a lot.
Yeah.
It was a lot. But I was able to essentially cut a year out of that journey. I'm already getting a late start at 27 to the professional world.
Yeah.
And if I had to go to school, one, how am I going to pay for it? Again, the scholarship, sure, but that's going to cover the credits in the books. How am I going to keep the lights on? Live. And at that point, I just moved officially from the East Coast out west with my, at the time, girlfriend. There's bills to pay and there's a life to live. And she never put the pressure on me, but I put it on myself. Yeah. And I think that Unum giving me that opportunity, Terrence Ryan and TJ Gustafson in particular, was such a blessing, and I will be forever grateful.
To what you're saying too, like to start that new job and go to school, would you do it all over again? I actually was faced with that decision when I got into sales. I didn't get into sales kind of till late like you. I think it was 30 or 31 when I got into a sales role with Sun Life. But prior to that, before the opportunity even presented itself, I had reapplied to graduate school. I did some graduate school while I was in college and playing soccer still because I had some eligibility left. But then I was like, well, I never finished my MBA. I probably should get that MBA. That makes sense. And at the time I was an analyst. So, like sales, you can sort of create your destiny. You have a little bit more ownership and the effort turn into higher income. When you're on a salary as an analyst, you hope for a little bitty bonus at the end of the year, but you don't really have much control. So I thought, an MBA will equate to a bigger salary. I'll make more money. So I applied, took the GMAT over again, although hadn't been in school for like 10 years. I stunk at the GMAT, but I at least got a score high enough to get into, and I was going to go to University of North Texas here down the road. I had picked out what I was going to do. I had gotten enrolled for the January. Then I get a fateful phone call from a recruiter, Peter Travis, saying, hey, we got this opening for a Sun Life sales rep, sell stop loss. Are you interested? And so I was faced with like, wait, do I sunk cost fallacy? I've already paid for the GMAT and took it and plan to go to school. Or do I accept the sales role, see where it goes? But I don't believe I should be doing both. That would be crazy. So I ended up going down the path of sales, and that's 10 years on, and I made the right choice. There's no way I would have gone to grad school and tried to be a stop loss rep at that time. So the fact that you were able to do that even for a year or so is pretty crazy.
It was such a blessing.
So how did you do though? How did you perform in early on? Did you have to shave your man bun and your beard?
So before the second interview, when I had to interview with TJ Gustafson, who was the top of the office, Terrence was the number 2. Terrence is like, and even the way he said it, he's like, so he was tiptoeing. How do you feel about shaving? And I was like, yeah, I'll shave. I got a haircut. Went in, did the interview, had my resume. Was super excited about it. Baseball player, that's about it.
Baseball player,
don't have a degree. Well, hire me. Was able to go through all that whole process. The Unum's, I don't know if you're familiar with like Unum's interview process. And they have what's called it's like 4 interviews, and then it's the regional assessment. And we did ours in Scottsdale or Arizona. That's virtually all the territories that want to hire the new, sales rep in that territory to go into the training program. essentially all the offices send down their people, and then it's like the top executives in the sales organization at Unum are there, and you're virtually doing 30-minute interviews back to back to back to back, and then they give you essentially a case study, and you have to do your finalist presentation and pitch to the board, which is at the time like the head of sales at Unum, and you're doing it in front of everyone else, and then you litigate and argue on which carrier they should choose with the people that you're competing against. And at the end of it, they hire one person.
Holy cow.
Yes, and I'm in the room with, what Notre Dame, MBA, right? All these people. And I'm like, I went to a state school. I don't even have my degree. Like, I don't belong in this room at all. But I'm told the reason they hired me was I looked at the case study. I almost went to the bathroom twice and just dipped out. I was like, I'm out. I thought about leaving 2 different times. Ultimately, I was like, just, pull, tighten up the belt and let's just get it done. And they said, all right, who wants to go first? I stood up and said, I'll go first. I said, our commitment to our clients and our commitment to our clients. And I just kept repeating the same thing over and over and over again. Didn't make any valid points whatsoever. And at the end of it, when we started to litigate or argue, I stood firm. I was the only one, the one gal who did the best job. Everyone was like, oh, you should hire her. And I was like, I was sitting there looking at them all like, no, like why would I recommend that you go to a different carrier? You should choose me. What are you guys talking about? And I was the only one that didn't vote for them to choose that, hypothetical carrier. And ultimately, that's what I was told is what got me the job.
That's fantastic, man.
Yeah, like the most simplistic form of that was to sell your group, right?
Yeah.
Why would I recommend that you don't go with me? That makes no sense. And I thought that they saw the...
Well, I mean, whether that's fate or whether it's just the right place, right time, right person, and preparation, right? Like, I mean, the fact of the matter is you won that role and you got to start your career. So what were you selling? Were you ancillary life disability products?
Yeah, so I did the training and finished school and then got my degree in December. They gave me my territory in January. Mm-hmm. This is January 2016. And they gave me the Central Valley. So ultimately it was, I think, like historically a $1 million premium. And you're selling dental, vision, life, disability, worksite products like the AFLAC, voluntary benefits. I think it was like a $1 million territory historically. A lot of, you don't have like the Aons and the Mercers right? And I was just in my car on the road, dropping off muffins, getting in front of people as much as possible. I made sure that I picked up the phone or called somebody back. I was always available. I got my inbox to zero every night. I did what I said I was going to do. And I realized pretty quickly that if you care and you have put attention to detail and you can deliver on promises, that you can make a ton of money being an ancillary rep. I don't have to necessarily be the smartest or most compelling or the most well-spoken person with a resume.
But I think what that speaks to, and I had this realization really early on too, and I was fortunately in my territory was able to ride along with the Sun Life ancillary reps too that opened doors and get me meetings with brokers because ultimately they felt they could lean on stop loss to lead the conversation and as a byproduct they would benefit. So I was like, cool, yeah, let's go. But I realized very quickly, just from feedback from the brokers, that the bar was pretty low in terms of like being a high performing rep in that, at least in that territory. It's like, oh, you called me back or you responded to my email. I'm like, wait, a sales rep that's incentivized to sell business isn't responding to emails? What the hell are they doing? Yeah. And I go, oh, okay, well, if I just do the very basic things correctly now, I can build on that and build the skill set. But if all I have to do is just kind of work hard enough or work well and be somewhat smart at what I do, I'll be successful. Like I knew it pretty quickly. I didn't have any of those existential doubt about the trajectory of my career. And so that was good. That was reassuring. That allowed me the confidence to kind of go and build a career.
PlanSight is a complete game changer in the world of insurance brokering. As a broker, you know how time-consuming and error-prone the traditional RFP process can be. But what if I told you there's a better way? PlanSight is the only end-to-end RFP solution on the market made specifically for benefits agencies. It's like having a superpower that gets you an average of 8 to 10 hours back per employer renewal per year. And the best part, PlanSight supports all carriers, all funding types, and all group sizes for over 20 different benefits. If you're ready to make your RFP process faster, more efficient, and more profitable, it's time to call PlanSight. Visit plansight.com now to book a free demo and discover the future of insurance renewals.
But it's funny too, because you perceive that top performing reps are like the smartest people in the world. And ultimately, I think there's very few things that you need to do outside of just good old-fashioned effort and network building to be successful?
That's how I cut my teeth. I was there for almost 4 years, and it was really just effort, delivering on promises. And you think about like Life LTD, if you look at the total benefits package, the entire spend, including medical, you're talking about like 1% to 2% of the overall spend for an employer. If I can be dependable, I can sell my 12-cent LTD rate over Principal's 10 because the broker knows that they trust me, that if something does come awry, I'm gonna work to get it fixed.
Exactly.
And I look at our guest list at our wedding, and it was all a bunch of Central Valley brokers. They were all really close personal friends still to this day of mine, and they gave me my first opportunity. They, kudos to them, taking the meetings with me and letting me, do my thing, and they helped me. They were invested in my success. They said, hey, what do you need to get to goal? Hey, what do you need to make sure that you go to conference? And I had multiple brokers, Rose Kropelka, Tom Hughes, Bruce Thomas, Lynn Bull. I shouldn't even start naming them because I'll leave too many out, but people they were invested in Shawn's success and what can we do to help Shawn be successful. And it was really, really cool. And I realized that it's an industry that's built on relationships.
I've known you about a year, and we'll obviously proceed forward and get to like your entrance into Pareto and healthcare and stuff. But I've noticed that about you. You do have an ability to cultivate relationships with brokers that's pretty uncanny, and they do want you to succeed, right? I think it's pretty interesting. Like, you have relationships with brokers, and ultimately, hey, in a jump ball situation, you might win. But it's a whole nother degree of desire for your success to see people like trying to work with you, and you've continued that, and you do that. I've noticed that same thing about you at Pareto. Why do you think that is? Like, what is it that you think about your personality or your persona that has people gravitate to want to help you?
I could go the political route.
You give me the right answer, the honest answer.
I'll give you the right honest answer. I think that I'm a very genuine person, very direct, and I think that people see that I am invested in their success. The people that I want to work with that want to be successful, I'm going to do whatever it takes to help them be successful. Maybe that's back to sports and the team aspect of it, I don't know. But I think that people genuinely want to help those that want to help them, or want to be around people that want to be around them.
Reciprocity. Dude.
Exactly. Like, I'm genuinely interested in what you have to say, and I'm listening, and I think that there's an authenticity to how I was raised and the person I am that I'm really proud of. And I think that resonates with a lot of people, and it's led to really, really great relationships and a lot of people that I could depend on.
That's awesome, man. Well, all right, so did you find yourself ultimately getting bored or stale in the world of ancillary sales, or did Pareto come your direction? How did that transition happen?
So I had never even put a thought. I was kind of thought I'd be the gold watch guy, and like, this is all I knew, right?
Yeah.
Baseball and then Unum.
Yeah.
And the Unum does a great job, I don't want to say brainwashing, but they do a great job of like, this is the value proposition. This is important. Life and disability is important. And I truly believe that. I never thought that do I want more? And then all of a sudden, I had just gotten married, and I'm on my mini moon, and my wife is in the shower after a day at the pool, and I get a phone call, and I know it's a recruiter. I've talked to her before. And I was just like, yeah, the heck with it. I'll pick it up. I swear it was that morning was the first time I ever thought, there might be more, right?
Yeah.
There might be more that I want. Do I really want to be here for the rest of my career? Is there something else? I don't know what it is, but is there something else? I mean, just like 1% thought in my brain.
An opening. Yeah.
And the recruiter calls. I pick up. She says enough interesting and compelling things to me that I'm like, all right, you know what? Listen, I'm going to be back in California. I'm in Fresno all day on Tuesday. I'll be driving back from 3:30 to 6:30. Call me during that time. We'll chat about all this as much as you want. Sure enough, she called me. I talked to her the whole way through. Again, said enough interesting things that kind of put some hooks in me that I was like, all right, I'll do your test. Go to the personality test that we make
CI,
people do.
Yeah,
I'll do the CI test, and I'll update my resume, which I had to go find because I only used one.
Well, baseball and Unum, right?
And baseball and now Unum. And I'll send it over, and then it was really just the next. I didn't know. I wasn't all in. I wasn't actively looking, but I was like, oh, you know what? I'll see this through without letting it, affect my day to day. And the expectation is I'm going to still be at Unum, and this is where I'm going to be for a long time.
Right.
It was multiple conversations, but the thing that there's two that really, really stand out. It was Chip Cerniak, who was ended up being my boss when I first came to Pareto, and I just loved that guy. Everything he had to say, his just positive energy, and just
He wants to help all the time. Like, he
always wants to help.
Genuinely wants to help you. Yeah.
Constantly. And funny enough story. He's like, oh, where are you from? Oh, Cinnamon. He's like, oh, I grew up in Cherry Hill. I said, Cherry Hill? My mom and dad grew up in Cherry Hill. We're the East and West, or East or West, because there's 2 high schools there.
Okay.
My mom went to East, my dad went to West. I went to East. And it's like, what year did you graduate? Oh, they ended up being a year apart from each other, and it's an ongoing joke that Chip's my dad. Just some humor internally, but ultimately it was just we just had a nice rapport. And then my next conversation was with Andrew Clayton, and I don't want to sound like I'm brown nosing here. I don't know if he's listening to this or not, but
he's listening right now.
I had a conversation with Andrew Clayton, and I think everything else in my whole life changed. And I wanted to be at Pareto. This is where I wanted to be. I can get into a bunch of, well,
if it's any consolation, obviously, for those that are listening, I spoke with Kristen earlier today, which is why I'm wearing the exact same jacket. But Kristen brought up Andrew Clayton, the same thing. A different conversation, of course, between her and him and you and him. But ultimately, his name has come up twice as somebody that was very influential in the decision-making process. And I'm not surprised in the least, right? Mm-hmm. We all know Andrew, but I think the folks listening may not know a co-founder. He is one of the most influential people I've ever been around. Like, you want to do what he wants you to do because he's just that level of persuasion, and you believe him because he knows what he's talking about, et cetera, et cetera. So we could gush about him, but I don't doubt that that's the case.
The one who come before we move off of Clayton, but the authenticity and the genuineness that I mentioned earlier, that's him. So they made it clear. Actually, it was pretty lucky because the only groups that they'd written at Pareto in California before I started happened to be with the brokers I mentioned earlier that were at my wedding. So when Pareto was doing their fact-finding mission, like, hey, who do we want to hire? My name kept luckily popping up.
Oh, wow.
So it was throughout the whole interview process. And the other thing, too, was when I went out to Philly and did the interview, after the interview, every single rep at Pareto, Justin Sifra, Pete Doran, Andrew Cavanaugh, who's our CEO, every single one of them came afterwards, and we had beers together, and they just hung out. Everyone. Yeah. Literally, no one missed it. And I thought that was just the coolest thing, right? Yeah. And before I even leave, Chip's like, we're going to hire you. We'll send you. Like, I didn't even leave. Like, I was calling my wife, like, I don't even have to wait like for tomorrow because they already told me, like, yeah, you're the person we want.
Man.
And then with Clayton and Chip throughout the whole journey is while there was a necessity, they needed to get me on board, they didn't give me pressure because they knew how loyal I was, and going in and having a conversation with TJ at Unum was going to be difficult. Like, I owe a lot of my career to that. He taught me how to be a professional. Yeah. And I owe, at that point, a majority of my success to him and to Unum and the organization. And they never made me feel pressure, right? It was, hey, you're the guy we want. We're going to wait. We're here to talk as many times as you need to talk. And when you're ready, we're going to bring you on board. And I think it was that, the lack of pressure and just talking to me about, my future and what I could mean to Pareto and what Pareto can mean to me. It just was like a really, really difficult decision. And I had a lot of struggle with it, but it didn't come from, there was no pressure. None of that struggle came from
you weren't running away from anything necessarily, it sounds like. But I mean, was there something that was compelling about the solution set that you were able to offer? Because you hadn't really entered into the world of medical much, and so self-funding was probably a stretch and captives were a further stretch, right? But was there something compelling, a way that was positioned or what was talked about that you go, I want to do that? Like, tell me about that.
Hearing, again, I said I wasn't going to mention Clayton again, but hearing Clayton talk about Pareto, like what it is, right? It's more, for me, it's like, this sounds more like a mindset. Like, it doesn't sound like a product or a thing, insurance. It sounds like the wave of the future, and sounds like the rest of the market is totally broken, and we're like the white, or the knight in shining armor, and an opportunity to make effective change, right? I'm not smart enough to be a doctor. I can't save people's lives, but I can have impact in my role, and how I make money can directly impact the financial security and the health and well-being of an organization and all of their employees and all of their dependents. I was like, that sounds too valuable of a career that I can't pass that up. Yeah. Right. And then when they shared their distribution model and how they kind of handle the broker market, I was very intrigued. That sounds like something I could really get down with, if you will. And from there, it was like, yeah, this is the place for me. I think it would be the perfect fit.
Well, so talk to me about the learning curve, though, right? Because like we said, this is the kind of what most people on the outside, or at least tangentially related to benefits, think of captives as like one of the most complex things. You and I know that's actually not true. It's a misconception. But ultimately, like, there's probably a steep learning curve for you just not even touching medical before. So, like, how long did it take you to even be able to talk this language?
So 4.5 years ago, I knew nothing about the deductible on my healthcare plan, let alone the specific deductible on a stop loss policy. I didn't know about pharmacy benefit management, and I didn't know about, third-party management. I knew nothing. So there was a very, very steep learning curve. What I can tell you is it was kind of a catch-22. I started at, my last day at Unum was March 17th, 2020. My first day at Pareto was March 30th, 2020.
Oh.
The lockdown was March 17th, right?
That's wild.
The initial lockdown. I remember I actually drove my wife, we drove to the office, and the security guard wouldn't let us in, and then my wife went around the back and then opened the door to get all my stuff. If we didn't do that, it would have been like a year later, we would have went and got all my stuff from my office at Unum.
Holy cow.
That was the day of the lockdown. So while that was difficult, I had essentially all of Pareto, at that point maybe 40, 50 employees, I don't know. I had all of Pareto at my disposal. Everything was virtual, right?
Yeah.
So I got to see Justin Sifra do employer meetings, Adam Booth do consultant meetings, Libby Henry do employer consultant meetings, channel partner meetings with pharmacy benefit managers. Everything was at my fingertips, right in front of me, and I think that I was able to accelerate my knowledge, if you will.
Sure.
And then also really make a determination on, well, where do I want to focus? What do I want to get deep on? What's important to me? How can I get our story out and make it resonate with more employers? And I was really able to, in a year, I think, accomplish maybe 3 years of information because everybody was willing to help. That's the coolest part about Pareto, and honestly our industry in general, even our Sun Life stop loss reps and close to Brian Skaggs is a Sun Life rep.
Yeah, he's great.
In my territory. He's taught me, outside of Pareto, he's taught me everything I know about stop loss, right? But hey, can I get on a call with you? Bam. Can I talk to Smith or X or Magellan? Bam, we're on the phone. In our industry, it's unique. I feel like we're all kind of on this side of the fight, and it's status quo is the competition.
It is weird, and it is. This is the last year plus being here. It's the most sharing that I've seen amongst peers and almost friendly competitors, right? And even we cultivate this. What you've seen it right in our events, like brokers sharing knowledge with each other, right? Because they're not perceiving each other as a threat. It does feel like there's a mission alignment that everybody sort of centers around, and that allows them to be freer to actually share ideas amongst each other. It's fascinating to watch because I haven't always seen it to be the case.
No, I think it's unique to Pareto. I think it's one of our differentiators. I could at any point need a fill-in for an employer call because I'm overbooked or something came up. My daughter got sick and needs to go to the pediatrician, whatever it is. I could just send one note on our Slack channel, or now Teams. I could send one note, and I would have probably 7, 8 of my peers around the country saying, "Yeah, I'm free. I can jump in." I don't know organizations that are like that, right? And hey, I need help, or I had this question, or hey, can you get me in contact with this person? Within our entire organization, everybody wants to help everybody, and I think that it is that camaraderie, that common goal. We're all moving in this direction forward, and it's important to all of us. And I think that extends out to our broker partners. It extends out to our channel partners, out to the members, and it creates this ecosystem of collaboration and sharing and support. It's a wonderful, wonderful place to be.
Well, I would agree with you, man. And I want to touch on a little bit of your early stages of sales, right? And the sales success. And then I think you went through some growing pains, if I understand your story correctly, and then emerged on the other side as one of our top sales folks, right? And I think it's no surprise to anybody that knows you that you were going to be near the top or at the top at some point. But question for you, how did it feel in market, during COVID and everything's virtual and you're trying to sell this new idea and this new thing to you, and was immediate success? Did it take a while for you to ramp? What was the first year or so?
Not immediate. Okay. I came on March 30th. I think I sold my first group was December 1st. So I had a big goose egg for a long time. I only sold 10 groups my first year, which at the time was what we doubled the market presence in California, right? So it was unique, but I was very fortunate because of the relationship I had at Unum. I was able to honestly sell my first 10 groups before I really knew what I was doing, right? Because I had Sifra and Libby and everyone else, and Chip, who was my boss at the time, could jump in and help me educate the market, educate the brokers. And I really was a few of my broker partners, and maybe they had experienced the self-funding, maybe they didn't, but I was like, hey, I'm telling you right now, I don't really know what I'm talking about yet, but this is real. Like this is where the industry is going to head. I need you to trust me on that. And they did. And I was able to really sell the first 10 groups off of my Rolodex and just a commitment to Shawn. And it wasn't, perfect. I wish I could have sold 20 or 25, but it was a great start. And then I really focused on the first half of 2021 on, okay, I need to be compelling. I need to be an expert.
Yeah.
What do I need to do to position myself to be an expert to where I don't need to lean on other people to do this? I took it very seriously, and I think I came out on the other side of it. And it sounds a little cocky, I guess, but I know my market, I know our products, I know the industry, and I feel like I can provide a lot of value in being in front of employers, being in front of consultants, brokers, because of the time and effort that I put in.
ClaimDoc is a medical claim auditing and member advocacy company. We provide fiduciary services to employer-sponsored benefit plans, and allowing them to create an environment where we ensure that the benefit plans are being charged on a fair and reasonable basis.
My business is basically people, and it become a real simple transition. We thought it was going to be far more complex. I've saved, we'll say, hundreds of thousands of dollars. I could not say enough about ClaimDoc.
Well, in the time and effort you put in, I didn't tell you the first time I met you too. I was joking earlier about that, but the thing that actually,
What were you joking about?
it intrigued me about you was like within 5 or 10 minutes, you and I were talking about pharmacy contracts, and I know Smith came up in that conversation, and I'm just like, I'm new here, and I don't know everything we got going on. I'm like, holy cow, this guy knows what he's talking about. It was really eye-opening to realize the level that I was entering into, because I didn't have a ton of background in Pareto before joining. I'm like, everybody here is really, really smart. And that impressed me, not only about you, but about the organization as well, that the standard was so high of what you were supposed to know as a subject matter expert, not just a rep or a salesperson for that organization. And I think speaks volumes to the success we've had. But I want to ask you though, as you moved on through our sales process, and the thing I was kind of hinting at earlier, I think we have a unique sales process that we don't have to, hammer here. But I think you had an epiphany, from my understanding, of not quite adhering to it because you thought Shawn Sanford and his charisma and his broker relationships would ultimately lead to success. And then you realize, wait, I actually do need to follow the sales process. And when you did, the other side of that, you had a really, really good year, have had really good years since. So talk to me about that realization.
Yeah. So, before you really know what our product or solution is or how to effectively sell it, you're told, like, this is our sales process.
Yeah.
And it starts with education first. You need to approve the consultant, educate them on Pareto. In most cases, especially in California, educate them on self-insurance, on stop loss. Yeah. Because there are brokers in our market that when I came over here, $2, $3, $4 million books and didn't have a single self-funded group. Yeah. It's just a different market. It's a different space, or at least it was, and it's changing. But ultimately, educate the consultant, vet the consultant, make sure you have buy-in. They're committed just like you are on our vision for the future, and they're on the team, right? And then it's put us in front of your client. We're going to help that education of that employer group, and then we'll take the data submission, we'll work on our financial indication and a quote. And before I really understood, okay, so this is the rules, and I'm a soldier, right? So these are the rules, I'm gonna follow the sales process, but I got soft on it, I got flexible because I had this broker house and this broker house, or this producer that when I was at Unum, I know he's got a great book or she's got a great book, and if I can just be flexible here, it'll earn favor for the future.
Right.
And I also wasn't maybe as confident in my ability, right? As an expert at that point, right?
Stand your ground.
There's a little bit of maybe hesitation or fear of not really being worthy of that, engagement. So I got a little soft on it, and then I realized very quickly that out of all the indications and quotes that have just kind of found themselves out into the market without adhering to our proven process, zero have ever sold. Still to today. 0 of our groups in California that have ever joined the captive did not go through an employer education overview with a Q&A, did not go through a financial indication, ultimately down to a quote. 0. Yeah. And I'm in the interest of pushing our market forward. I'm in the interest of paying my bills and supporting my family. Yeah. So I realized very quickly, There is no more being amenable or flexible. Our quote is the engagement, the process. Our engagement with you and your client is Pareto, right? The numbers are ultimately, they're a final touch to the whole thing.
They're a part of the equation, but when they get put front and center, when we talk about the commoditization of stop loss and the spreadsheeting, the industry does, they're a part of the equation. But if that's your sole focus, it's going to change your buying habits, and it's ultimately going to lead you probably to buy something that's inferior in terms of quality of contract. I think that's the alteration of even my own behavior that I had to come around to here versus the stop loss marketing world that I was accustomed to, or the GA world. It was a lot about price at that point. Who can get me the best price? Here, a part of the equation, like we said, it still has to make sense numerically, but that's not front and center to the conversation.
This is a multi-year strategy. It's the concept of paying your own claims, controlling your own plan. Stop loss is a minority portion of your total healthcare spend. Let's make sure we have the right contract in the right place, the right pool, peer group, the right pool to effectively set it and forget it, right? The risk financing that you need if and when you do need it. And let's go focus on what matters. And that's the 70-80% of our spend. That's our employee experience. That's what we want to create and build as an extension of our organization, what we provide our employees and their families. I can tell you that there's been hard conversations along the way. There are brokers at this point that I do not work with because some of those conversations didn't go great. There are ones that have started off on a rocky, right? I've pushed the agenda of this is our process, this is why it works. And we kind of took a pause, and then now we've ramped back up. And some of my best relationships started with maybe some conflict at the beginning. But I can tell you that the ones that are bought in, they want to be, students of what we do. They want to push self-funded control into the market. I'm proud of a lot of the consultants in Northern California, because when I came in, it was like, well, that's not how we do things. Right? And it's like, well, if you want to work with us, it is. And a lot of them have been really supportive. And it's funny, the brokers that know this the best, they're the ones that always want me in the meetings, right? Because they understand that it's a piece or an extension of our business. And this is like Shawn's job is to do this piece, to set up a vessel in which I can take more control and provide more value for this client. And I think with the ones that, it has that harmony to it, they're our best relationship.
Well, that's what I'm glad you use the word vessel. I've used the word vehicle or vessel, kind of the same thing. But I do perceive the captive as the vehicle or the vessel to accomplish the end, the strategy that a consultant and their employer want to employ. Without the vessel, the risk financing component that you can set it and forget it and lock for a long term, the rest of the things aren't possible, which is what I kind of want to segue and shift into now for the conversation is let's talk about the things that are possible in healthcare, right? Let's talk about, controlling claims. Let's talk about pharmacy. What are the big things that get you excited, right? Because some days can get monotonous, right? You're talking about some of the same things, but are there things today in your market that get you jazzed to want to bring up, or that you see consultants doing, or change in sentiment in your market? Like what are some of the things that resonate for you?
There's a lot. I think more than anything, it's just the value that the consultant can bring to the group. Like you think about the broker community, or you think about our markets, they're advisors, and it's their job. They're paid to advise a employer who's not an insurance expert or healthcare expert on the decisions that they need to make sure that their business is as efficient as possible. And I think that our program just creates more opportunity for that, right? I think that I use the term vessel, like we are a means to an end. It's the status quo, fully insured plans, ASO, administrative services only, self-funded groups, like that's not actually making effective change. It's actually grabbing control of your plan and putting forth, the necessary measures to make sure that your dollars are most efficient, that your plan is as robust as possible. So what the things that really excite me is honestly just, it's the flexibility, the transparency, the control of, this is a big line item. I'm entitled to control of it. Unless I'm made aware of my opportunity to take control of it, I'm just going to be a regular consumer and continue on this upward trend, and that's not going to be good for my business or my people at all.
Well, it definitely starts with awareness, right? Like, was there a level of awareness? And I think every day we uncover things. It's like unraveling a sweater, right? You pull on the thread and it starts unraveling further and further, and you uncover more and more that you hate. But is there like awareness that you've had in your own life about this system that's like either frustrated you or surprised you, where you're like, no way, this is the way it's done? You had those type of epiphanies?
Yeah,
'Cause I feel like I have every single day.
yeah, it's amazing. Every day, learn something new. And what's funny is, when I came here, you learn all the things that are broken about the system, right? That's stacked. It's literally stacked against the small, mid-sized employer more than anyone else.
Yeah.
And that's information that I now know. And now, so any broker that doesn't want to work with us in the capacity that, our consultants work with us, I was mad. Like, hey, well, like what the heck? Like, why don't you want to work with us? You just want to stay on the same path forward that you've been on because what, a bigger commission, right? And that was the wrong way to look at it, because that's not what it was. It was even the brokers in the market didn't understand what's underneath the hood of, fully insured, of ASO, right? And I realized, like, okay, now that the biggest part of my job is creating awareness. So it's not so much selling Pareto, it's just awareness of what's actually happening and why these increases are coming, why the plans are completely out of control, and then leaning on that broker, consultant channel to put us in front of as many clients as possible. And you mentioned earlier, like, what really there's a million things we could talk about, but the thing that most excites me is prescription drugs.
Yeah, I figured that's what you were saying.
I just, because in the most simplistic form, if you really knew how the business is built, it's crazy. It's so
doesn't even seem
egregious.
legal.
It's unbelievable.
Yeah.
It's absolute highway robbery. It's gross. It's negligent. It's unbelievable. That is probably what motivates me the most, because it's just the aha moment. Like, well, yeah, there shouldn't be profit gouging and rebate sharing and all this on these really high cost specialty medications, or even your run of the mill everyday prescriptions for people who need it. Like, it's amazing how it's all just stacked against these employer groups and their employees and their dependents. And the more I dig, the more I find, the more excited I am to talk about it, because it's the most immediate change.
Well, there's a feeling, and we use the term the right side of the fight, but there's a feeling like once you know this information, all you want to do is try to make it right. Mm-hmm. You're not always going to be successful, right? Because there are very powerful forces and big companies that don't necessarily want to see it righted. But it's like, that's what makes me want to do this and be a part of this team, is trying to do it right. It's never going to be perfect, but at least you can do it in such a way that you can justify and seems fair. And on balance, there's as few compromises as humanly possible to get to the best end, right? What's that egalitarian end, the most good for the most people, right? And I just think if you look at the way it's set up today, you just find it almost impossible that the system is set up the way it is.
It's absolutely crazy. I mean, you look at, I know we have that slide that we share, the stock price of the major health insurers.
Yeah.
There's no way that's legal, right? Like, how does that even make any sense? Well, why are our premiums going up? And at the same time, the Buca stock prices are going up. They're aligned with each other. Their goal is for things to be more expensive, and it is at the mid market is at the mercy of a system that's broken and stacked against them. Mm-hmm. And it doesn't have to be that way. Like, that's what's exciting, is every conversation I get to have, creating more awareness, mm-hmm. is an opportunity to literally create a better pathway forward for a lot of people.
It's almost like the movie Inception, right? You plant a seed in somebody's mind and you get to water it and eventually let it grow. But each time you get it to do that, you actually turn on the light bulb for somebody else, right? Mm-hmm. And that's exciting, right? And I just feel Kristen described it as we're on the cusp of maybe a watershed moment in healthcare, but it's really exciting to be here at this precipice or this pivotal moment. It does feel like it's coming, and maybe people before us have felt the same thing 10, 20 years ago. I don't know. But you and I are here in this present moment, and it certainly feels like we're reaching whatever mm-hmm. point that is. Yeah. Something massively disruptive is going to happen.
Speaking of Kristen, I'm glad that I wasn't in here for her. She's probably, I don't know if there's anybody that knows. She's really good.
Yeah, she's awesome, man.
She understands it like the back of her hand, and she has a drive and a motivation to make the entire system better.
Yeah.
Right? And she's the best boss ever. It's unbelievable to know.
Well, we're going to cut this part out. I don't want to see this.
No, just to know wholeheartedly that, like, the people within leadership of the organization specifically Kristen, their goals are to make the market better, and they want to support us in our aligned goals to do the same thing. It's great. Anyway, enough about that.
I'm trying to couch this right and be a fair and balanced conversation, right? And we both obviously believe strongly in what we do and who we work for, and I think that's evident, right? Mm-hmm. But outside of pharmacy, what kind of some of the bigger other things that you would love to see changed? Is there a couple other items that, like, if Shawn had a pen or could stroke a wand and say that's changed, that changed, that changed? What do you think some of those things might be?
I mean, I think first it kind of comes back to pharmacy a little bit, but like the bundling of like network access and the network, and you have to use certain PBMs, et cetera, which is again that
just came up too.
A profit driver. I think is just it goes against like the whole philosophy of taking control of your plan. I wish there were more. Like I watched your podcast. I forget his name.
The one with Keith Smith, right?
Keith Smith. That was awesome. Like the Oklahoma Surgery Center.
Yeah.
Why don't I have 4 of those in Northern California, right? Like, what is it going to take for the broker community, the employers, to wholeheartedly say enough is enough? I don't care about the logo on the card. I want the best quality possible for the plan and the dollars that we're investing into this plan. Right. I want that to be what our focus is. And it's going to take time. It's going to be brick by brick.
Well, you heard him talk about building a parallel system. It's not like he wants to run the existing one. He calls it building a parallel system and bringing people over to it. But to a testament to how difficult it is, I think Keith in 2008 or 2009, that's when he first started posting his prices. It's 2024. So we're 15 years on, right? And it's not the normal model. You would think it's so obvious that would be the way to do outpatient surgery. Still, we're fighting this battle every single day, and he's got his free market medical association that's doing the same thing. But it just speaks to how difficult it is. It's almost like I would hear sometimes a big corporation described as an old wooden ship. To steer an old wooden ship takes a lot of effort. It takes a lot of time to course correct it. This is the biggest ship that you can possibly imagine. So course correcting that is just going to take a really long time. Mm-hmm. One of the things that I would like to see changed is the incentivization structure, not only for consultants, but just the way that people get paid in general. The whole commission structure in and of itself, I think, should be on the chopping block to some degree. I mean, it's not to say that commission is inherently bad, but it does drive behavior. Mm-hmm. And it does question, well, if the carrier's paying you instead of me, the customer paying you, who are you working for? I'm not calling anybody out or saying anybody's bad or intentionally doing it, but it does drive behavior, right? So you start to question that whole incentivization structure altogether. Mm-hmm. And not to mention, commission loads rates and, the detrimental effect that it has a premium. But it also just is like a philosophical question that I think our industry needs to address. Mm-hmm.
It's crazy to me, like throwing prices on a website is so far into the industry. Yeah. If we're going to go to dinner after this, the menu's going to have prices on it.
It is.
I don't understand. Like imagine, hey, here's a menu. There's no prices on it. Choose whatever you want, and then we'll send you a bill in 2 weeks, and it could be there's no transparency at all. That just is insane. I don't know how such a large part of our GDP, it's such a big, massive, multi-trillion-dollar industry can be so limited in its transparency.
I think that's why it's so massive too. I think it's because it's limited in its transparency. It's been allowed to grow and grow and grow, but not necessarily quality of outcomes improving simultaneously, right? I think the opposite is actually happening. So that's, I think we're preaching to the choir here, and I suspect a lot of people that listen to the podcast think pretty similarly in that regard. So why don't we say, let's move on towards the end and, get to, dinner and all those good things. Actually, we need to get out here in a second. We're both long-winded, so this works out perfectly for a podcast. But let's think about healthcare in a perfect world. What do you think it does look like? Or is there something that we're inching to? Do you think that after that watershed moment, what's going to happen on the other side of that? What do you envision?
I would love let's pick on RX again. Their rebates should be gone.
Yeah,
there should be no rebates whatsoever. Agreed. Our leverage, if we're a big purchasing power and we want to provide value to our clients, we use that leverage to negotiate a better price point with the manufacturer. Right? Rebates should not exist. I think that it's insane that they do.
Yeah.
I think that. Direct primary care, there's not enough of them. I think there needs to be more. I think that those should be able to be carved out from a plan, and you can kind of choose your own providers to go to, not dependent on a network. I think that direct contracting and direct pricing, like this is the price for services. If you think about it, philosophically, like, why isn't it that way? I don't understand. And I think that it's going to take time, to your point, but I hope that I can play a small part, that when, people ask my daughter, hey, what does your daddy do? My daddy played a part in making healthcare what it is today, because it used to suck. It used to be horrible.
Yep.
And you don't know that because of people like my daddy and Spencer and everyone else. I want her to be able to say that, and this is the United States of America. Why isn't healthcare more affordable?
It's supposed to be the beacon for the world. It's supposed to be the bleeding edge of innovation. It's supposed to drive ingenuity and attract people that want to do the best, create the best things. We've allowed the healthcare system to be a stain on, I think, America as a whole, and our history, at least its current form. And I'm with you. It has to be overhauled. It absolutely does. I fear that if not, the outcome is going to be some sort of government-run version, which let's quintuple how terrible it is if that's the case, right? And I don't think either one of us will see. All right, so Shawn, this has been great, man, and I love the fact that I get to see a little bit more chill, Shawn, too. Yeah. No, you've been great.
Put a camera on me.
Super cool.
A little bit more reserved.
Just so cool, bro. Just chilling. So closing thoughts, man. Tell me what you want to leave the folks, the audience with. I prepared you for this question too.
Did you?
I gave you full day to think about it.
What do I want people to leave with? That there can be a better path forward. We don't have to remain adherent, or is that
Adherent?
a word?
Yeah, that's a good
adherent.
word.
We don't have to remain adherent to the system that is built against us. It's just going to take some rolling up of the sleeves and a commitment to it. And I think that if we have enough people that row in that direction, we can. As audacious as it sounds, fix healthcare. It's going to happen day by day. It's going to happen group by group.
Yep.
It's going to happen, legislation by legislation, et cetera. But I do think that it's worth fixing. It's worth saving. And I think that it will eventually. And I think it'll happen in my lifetime.
Well, that reminds me of that post I made, I think last week, the paradox of hate, which is you have to hate something enough to want it to change, but you have to love it enough to think it's worth changing. That's exactly what I feel about healthcare. And the way you just triggered that thought, and I think that's the way that we both feel. So it's almost like we're recruiting people, join us, like a cult or something. But it really, I think it is, we're on to something, and it's not just going to be us. Let's be clear. It's not just going to be ParetoHealth. Hopefully we're a leader, and we are already a leader in that regard, but it's going to take the entire industry to choose to be better every single day. And so I hope, obviously, this conversation moves some people in that direction.
Even if it's one.
It's one.
Right?
It will be at least one.
It will be
Might
at least
be two. I don't know.
What do you have? 3, 4 listeners? So we get half of that.
Yeah, that's fair. Man. Well, thanks for crapping on me as we exit. I don't know. We'll see if this one sees the light of day.
Just to revert back, I'm so happy that you asked me to come on.
Yeah, man.
This I've always wanted to. I listened to Spencer. You're great for the industry. It's going to take more people like you to fix it, but we will fix it. It's not even a matter of if, or it's a when, and it's going to get fixed. And conversation after conversation, podcast after podcast, we can make effective change, and it's going to be an awesome way to look back on a career and be really, really proud of what we did. And I'm glad that I have the ability or the opportunity to play a role in something that I'm really, really passionate about.
Awesome, man. I couldn't agree more. All right, let's go have some dinner. Thanks for doing a podcast with me, dude.
Thanks, man.
Appreciate it.